What is our dilemma? What is our dilemma? Who's behind the curtain? How do we fix the things that are wrong? Is something I'm going to talk about today. I've been reflecting again on this, and as those people who know me, I will come back to the standard solution, but to lead there. I'm going to lead into this with a bit of an explanation and an understanding what I perceive to be going on in the external world, and more importantly, in my own internal world. I'm going to articulate or attempt to articulate this. And I was just listening, I was listening to a YouTuber called Quantum of Conscience, who has just made a breakthrough video as far as I'm concerned. I like this guy. He calls himself Matt. I think that's his real name. He appears to be somewhat isolated in his circumstances, living somewhere outside in a rural setting, and all of that. He's discontented. He is disillusioned about the world out there, and he's done some incredible videos exposing the bastards, which I appreciate. I mean, I really do appreciate that. All the people that are out there exposing the bastards, that's fabulous, that's great. But it's not going to get us out of the shitter that we're in. That's what I've always said. To know who the culprits are isn't really going to solve our problem. And now Matt, in this video, I'll attach a link because I think you should listen to it. He doesn't really click on it, but he's getting there as far as I can tell. And I'm not being like superior or trying to pull something like, oh, he's fine. No, I'm really excited about this fellow who has in his icon, well, the icon's kind of weird, that quantum thing. But the conscience part attracted me. That's why I listened to him. And he's not quite able to put it together, because at about 10:15, and I left a comment, he said, "It's just us." Right. It's just us. Wow. What an epiphany. It's just us. But what does that mean? And he does say that if we were to change ourselves to the extent that we would no longer, this is somewhat implicit in what he says, but he tries to say this as well, that if we no longer went along, it's kind of like this conformity feeling that I've mentioned, and the reason that I appreciate and love art, because it appears, sometimes it actually is, it appears at least not to be conforming with, although that has been manipulated and hijacked as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about this and get toward the solution, what I feel is the solution. And I want to remind people who have not watched my channel, this is the dreaded red. It may look like the nuclear symbol, but you got the colors all wrong. Isn't it yellow and black? Well, from a visual point of view, I have an affection towards yellow, and I resent the fact that these criminals who run an industry that is destroying all life on this planet have hijacked the color I really like. So I've decided to make it red, the dreaded red, also associated with the evil being, Santa Claus. Also the red Santa, oh no, I'm sorry, not Santa, Satan. Oh, Santa, Satan, isn't that red? Ooh, interesting. Anyway, the symbol of the dreaded red to me represents this criminal syndicate who's in the china shop breaking all our china. So anyway, people didn't know. So my comment, my thought, what I hope to be is something that will help people, to give people a sense of hope, considering that the external world has so completely taken over everything in our lives, which is an irony, because everything emanates from us. We are the energy. We are the beings that create the reality that we perceive out there to a large extent. This is still something in my mind I'm noodling over. I'm trying to come to terms with the idea of objectivity, whether there actually is such a thing as objectivity, meaning that that part that we consider to be an external part to us is in fact that by itself, like compartmentalized, like I'm in a body and you're in a body and we're two separate entities and all that, which is a curious notion. And I can't say I am evolved and enlightened enough to be able to distinguish that, that sense, I suppose, of oneness that we're striving towards, like the swamis and the gurus who have failed us, have indicated. They say the right things quite often. Like a lot of people say the right things very often, but it's always continuously couched in this external world. It's never the inner world. Like the swamis don't express themselves as who they are, who I am, my flaws, my epiphanies, my attributes, my quality. It's always like I'm sitting there like a detached being that has nothing to do with you or anyone else. Well, they pretend, I suppose, and then they get a lot of leg over, like the Bhagwan types and all these enlightened who have all their little sheep around them and that are just, oh, if I could be humped by the big Swami or something like that. It's all like the groupies. It's like recreated this groupie. Why am I getting off topic? Okay, my topic. The idea that I really liked about Matt at Quantum of Conscience is the penny is dropped, or is dropping anyway. So that our continuous focus on the external world, and we know there's major problems going on. So we've understood something that is not working. Something out there, like as I'm not talking to people who are saying, well, what the hell are you talking about? Everything is basically hunky-dory. I have my cottage, I have my boat, my kids, I love my kids even, I have a wife and partner, I love everybody. Yeah, what's wrong? Well, I suppose you could say to yourself, and if you're that type of a person, you're probably not going to be interested in what I have to say, because I'm going to say it's not working. Even though it may be working in a microcosm for you in the sense of being attached and connected to something that is not just us, and I can't explain why that is the way that, you know, how that works. Like I say, I'm noodling on it. I'm not talking to you, okay? I'm not talking to you. Go ahead with your life. Do the best you can and forget about what I'm saying. I'm talking to the people that realize something isn't working in their own life and consequently also in the world around us. So I had a conversation with a friend, and I think he watches my videos, and I mentioned to him after he told me that some of the things that are disturbing him, he's quite focused on the external world, how it's breaking apart, and he's changing his life and radically has changed his life over the last 10 years, but still has this notion about having had several marriages and, you know, the people in the marriage were the problem. And I was reminding him, yes, obviously the external world exists and creates issues for us, but what is fundamentally the common factor is ourselves in any situation. So if they're not working, we need to look at ourselves rather than outside. And we can find a lot of flaws in people or in situations around because it's not working. That's why. It's very easy to find the dysfunction that is outside. But more importantly, the inner world is not being addressed in order for us to make the right choices. Like I say, we got to do the right thing every day in order for this to change the path we're on. Now, I thought this morning, and I've talked about the culture of death and how this entire system has been built around us, around something that is, this was an anomaly in my mind, very beautiful and wholesome in many aspects. Like if you listen to the music that has been produced, or the painting, the art that comes out of culture, and even to some extent, the ritual, and I'm not part of that whole ritual side of things, of the, I suppose if you look at the rituals, well, dance and kind of gatherings where people sort of produce groupthink in a way. It comes out of an original thought and then it's reproduced over and over, maybe because it works. I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing. But here's my problem with culture, what I call the culture of death. I'm going to put a number on it. I would say that 95% of what we consider to be culture has been infiltrated by a very curious infestation. A parasite, a virus has infected what is actually quite beautiful in essence and can be replicated. If something works, we want to replicate this, so we call it culture. But what has happened is that there is a very devious element that has persuaded us to go along with that twisted version of it. Like if I look at, for example, an artist like Bowie, that a lot of people like. I've done a thing on Bowie. I've said that Bowie gives me the EBGBs, even though the work is quite seductive and quite phenomenal. If you're, if you listen to his music, there is a quality in this music that we feel attracted to. Now, what I do, I don't discard it, but I say this person, the persona, has been captured and hijacked, whether he knows it or not. I think he did know it. He actually represented something to me that indicates he was hijacked, just in the very nature. It's like contrary, what looks as nonconformity actually looks the conformity of something that is very much what, like I say, I have a romance with eternity, and Bowie had a romance with the Grim Reaper. All his stuff. Let's see if I still have this this image. Yeah, this is like, I keep this to remind me. This is Bowie. Isn't this curious? A Japanese kimono on this anemic-looking female spread over his legs, and he's like Baphomet, right? Look at his hand. He's like the Baphomet. This indicates to me that he knew what he was doing, and there's a problem. So people, you can enjoy his music, I suppose, if you can separate the intent behind it. You can probably take something out of it if you can separate the intent behind it. This is something, again, if we don't do that inner work, we're easily hijacked into the notions and a thought, a world view that has nothing to do with the original intent of something. Like if you listen to the blues, if you have a connection to this sense of what is that feeling that we get, that empathy, like it's a music of empathy that is just phenomenal. And then it gets taken over, as far as I feel, even though I like the rock aspect of it, it gets taken over and hijacked. This empathy is reversed back into the external world as a kind of gratification. This is how I interpret it. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy whatever some of even the Stones stuff. I find it quite seductive. So what I'm what I'm saying, and out of this Quantum of Conscience Matt video that he gets it, it's just us. It's up to us. The problem we're having is that 95% of everything we're exposed to is literally taking down a path of choices, many choices that have nothing to do with that rightness about something, what I call conscience. So culture presents us with many choices that are all the wrong choices. They're all the wrong choices, with the exception of a few people that are committed to doing the right thing and, generally speaking, are not invited into this culture of death. So if you're an artist with great success in this culture, you have 99% sure of this. You have sold out. Either you're a complete dupe or you've sold out. So it does, for whatever reason we have allowed this, well, I know why, but I'm saying for whatever reason we've allowed this to unfold in this way, we have been presented, okay, this is how it works. This element amongst us, I'll go into this a little bit, and I'll refer to another YouTuber called Mr. Cat Eye. This element amongst us has infiltrated a very small group, I believe, a very small group, because generally speaking, the population is a bit of like a plasma thing. It's like it is easily pushed and pulled into a certain direction because we rely on a kind of sensual experience of the world, and that inner reflection has been discouraged. We are given the solutions and the choices beforehand, and none of them are the right choices. So this is occurring. So as the way I see this unfolding in this culture of death is that we have been infiltrated and given all the wrong choices. And this is something that can only be countered by a process, and it's not an easy thing to do. This is not something that's simple. In fact, we're quite averse to looking at ourselves. Like I say, it's much easier to forgive than to ask for forgiveness. And there is a reason to that, because we can say, okay, you've transgressed and it's good to forgive. I have a difficult time with that sometimes. But it's much more difficult for me to ask somebody to forgive me for a transgression that I've committed, because I'm admitting to it, right? I'm admitting it's more difficult. And this is just one small aspect of why all this is sort of like all mucky muck. It's like not working, that we're always focusing on something that is presented to us that's an easier out. That's what I'm saying. This is why our conscience has been undermined by culture, the culture of death. There is always a choice that is much easier. Either we get paid a lot, and then that makes it a lot easier for most people, or we're given, you know, alternatives that sort of may feel okay, but we know somewhere they're not. And it's a questioning, it's a continuous questioning, and invoking this gift we have. I can't see it, and why is this thing there in me? I don't know why it's there. Why don't I just go along with Aleister Crowley and do as thou wilt? Why can't I feel right about that? Like, people inject themselves into culture, like the Aleister Crowley types, and the entire range from the popes to the present politicians, to the leaders, to the scourges, to the Attilas, to the Alexander the Greats, you name them, the entire bunch of historical record of mayhem and destruction take over the China shop, and we're left there looking perplexed. Why we're suffering? Why we're suffering? That's because we don't do the inner work. We don't evaluate the situation based on our inner compass, which has been discouraged, which has been removed, which culture has eradicated for the most part. 95% of it no longer exists in culture. There are remnants, there are pockets, but these people that present us, like myself, with the work, with the insight, with the understanding, are not accepted into this culture. Like I said, the museums, I used to have shows at museums, they no longer talk to me. They don't return my calls. They avoid me. They're hostile even. People have approached certain curators that know me. So I said, look, I can't talk to these people. Why don't you have a chinwag with them? Very high-standing citizens in my community, very established, can't even get an audience with the local curator. Can you imagine that? They refuse to see a person because they know they're associated to me. And this collector said to me, I'm blown away. I can't believe this is happening. But that's how it works. That's how it works. And I'm fortunate to be able to have the resources and whatever that support system that is behind me that allows me to make my work. I'm not stuck anymore. I used to be a house painter until I was in my early 30s. I used to be a house painter, and then my art, even though I didn't get the recognition in the public domain, but I had people that supported me. And whatever money I didn't make, I would rely on other ways of making the money to make sure that I was able to do what you see back there. This is just an example of some of the work I'm pulling out. This is how we're peripheralized, and I highly encourage people to find the strength, to find the support in a small group around yourself or a larger group, and especially within yourself, to let this percolate, this feeling of conscience. And you do the right thing, you're going to be taken care of. This is another part of it. This is a mystery. I don't know how that works, people, but I feel very privileged because I've been taken care of. And I don't have to stand on YouTube, say, oh, please give me money, or go fund me this, or give me this. And you know, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I prefer to rely on my own energy to generate what I want to do. That's all. And there's nothing wrong with accepting, or let's say that within this social system, there are safeguards for people not to fall under the bus. That's beautiful. I highly recommend a country to take care of the people that are vulnerable. So anyway, this is my notion. I just thought I'd inject that culture I call the culture of death has been hijacked. So if we look outside, we're going to be lost. We're going to be lost. We have to look on the inside and attach ourselves to those things that work. And what makes us be able to choose the right thing is our conscience. And it's something we work on. It's not like a fait accompli, like it just happens because you have it in you. It has to be tested every day. It has to be invoked every day. So Matt from Conscience, thumbs up, 5-star video. It's just us, but the explanation you missed. You have to explain this, but I'm sure you're going to get to this. You're going to get to the subtlety of all of that. And who is behind the curtain is irrelevant once this kicks in, people. This is what I strongly feel, that once this kicks in a larger portion of the population who is not going to go along with the subterfuge, what's going on out there, to accept the dysfunction as part of our function. It doesn't matter who's behind the curtain. They're going to spin their wheels and get all flaky and antsy and weird, but they'll be totally discarded in a very short time. And we would fix this. We would fix this. There is a solution. I guarantee, I have faith there is a solution. And but they want us to lose hope, like the nothing deception. Go to my video about the nothing deception, because if you incorporate this oblivion within yourself, you're not going to find a solution on stuff that is actually, and I'm going to think about this and come back to you and talk about what I think is what it actually means to be in an external world after having understood the inner world.